All right, welcome back and Alive Now. I'm Austin Westfall. A live look at the White House, 10:15 in the nation's capital, 7:15 on the West Coast. President Trump has sent letters to a handful of countries this week outlining higher tariffs they'll face if they do not make trade deals with the U.S. by August 1st. Brazil is the largest of the 8 nations that the White House is targeting in the letters. The continuing tariff saga is a complex and confusing topic to many. Let's make sense of it with John Thomas. He's the managing director at Nestpoint. So lots to get to here. Before we get to the new countries, let's get a baseline understanding of where this tariff story stood before today's news. Trump's Liberation Day announcement was at the beginning of April. What do people need to know about what's happened with tariffs since then, John? Let's catch everyone up.
Sure. A lot has happened. So Trump originally said he was going to be levying tariffs. He laid out with a giant graphic in the White House of the tariffs he would likely be imposing upon a bunch of these countries. And he generally based it upon what he called reciprocal tariffs, which is if a country is charging us to sell their goods to them a percentage of a tariff, we're going to charge them the same percentage. That stuck for a little bit, but then he put a pause on that, a temporary pause, in order to negotiate with countries to come to some kind of reasonable tariff alignment with both countries, so that the EU, for instance, isn't tariffing American cars so much, so that perhaps the EU could actually buy some American cars, not just that we buy European cars. So he took a brief pause there. That pause was expected to lapse, Austin, this week and go back to the Liberation Day high tariffs. When President Trump said, look, we haven't come to all the trade deals with all the countries that we want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend this by essentially a month. I'm going to extend the pause. And he started sending letters to a host of countries that they haven't come to any kind of trade deal with. And President Trump just said in the letter to each country, I have determined unilaterally, this is the tariff that you're going to pay if you want to sell into the United States. So that's where we are as of today, is that many countries are getting letters with the tariff rates. Now, the one caveat I would say, Austin, is President Trump did say this week that those are still negotiable. That if these countries that receive letters from President Trump want to call President Trump and the U.S. and negotiate a better deal, they're open to that, but it has to be a fair deal. And the last thing, Austin, is President Trump has come to several trade tariff deals with a handful of countries, but there's a lot more work to be done.
So what's the simplest way to think about this, John? Can people wrap their mind around it by putting it this way? Is the White House punishing nations? I guess what I'm trying to say here is the White House punishing nations that sell more than they buy from the United States?
That's a great way to put it. In fact, I think President Trump put it pretty simply, which is he feels there's what we call a trade imbalance, meaning that other countries, like you said, that are selling to us get to take advantage of the greatest market in the world, which is the United States economy. And yet when we sell our stuff to them, they charge us an insanely high taxation or tariff rate. And Trump is saying it has to be a two-way street. We either charge the same rate to each other or we don't charge tariffs at all. And the other incentive, Austin, and it's been working, we're seeing it with some of our clients here at Nestpoint, is President Trump said, if you make your product here, whether you're a foreign company or a U.S. company, no tariffs to sell into the U.S. market. And so we've seen that a lot of companies are expanding their production facilities here in the United States, and that's good for the American economy. I think the challenge, though, Austin, that President Trump has run into is one of politics, which is in order to cut a bunch of trade deals with all these countries, they're filled with their own political interests and politicians. So coming to a simple agreement is very difficult.
So have you yourself spoken with U.S. companies about the challenges that these tariffs present for business overseas? For example, is it tough to keep track of how to properly calculate tariffs when there's so much in flux?
Yeah, in fact, this is a large part of our business is helping American companies navigate overseas markets. And look, a lot of American companies, just bluntly, Austin, at first were freaking out about the American tariffs, saying, "Uh-oh, what are we going to do? We buy our product, we manufacture abroad. We can't take these tariffs." But most of the companies we work with have looked at this actually as a competitive edge. They say, "Look, if we manufacture in the United States, we get no tariffs, which provides us we can sell our product for a lower price than our foreign competitors. We can create American jobs. So it's a win-win for the American economy and companies that want to make it right here in America." And the foreign tariffs, we can see with companies that we're doing work with, Austin, companies like Instant Pot, for instance, they make a pressure cooker. It is incredibly difficult for them to sell abroad in other countries because the tariff rates are so high for American companies that want to sell abroad. So it really also comes down to an issue of fairness.
Let's talk about this. This is the news of the day. Brazil. Okay, 50% tariffs. Reuters has it. President Trump said his administration would impose a 50% tariff on all imports from Brazil starting August 1st, while the Republican leader also expressed support for the former Brazilian president. So, okay, there's a political element to this, obviously. Why Brazil? Why is this in the news today?
Well, that's a great question. There's a couple reasons, I think, for this. Number one, President Trump said Brazil has made no efforts whatsoever to cut a tariff deal with the United States. So this is his way to just say, look, you're not going to play ball. I'm going to play hardball, and this is what you're going to pay, number one. But there's also a bigger geopolitical context that's going on here, Austin, that the media isn't talking about yet. I think they will probably this coming week, which is China is taking control of a lot of areas in the economy of Brazil. And so this is in part a way for President Trump as a proxy fight to fight back against China in a broader ongoing trade war.
So lastly, let's talk about the other countries that Trump has outlined today. They include Myanmar, Cambodia, Bangladesh, many others. The president says those countries will face higher tariffs if they don't make trade deals with the U.S. by August 1st, John. John, would you say it's safe to say that foreign companies may absorb some of the costs of those tariffs, but U.S. businesses and consumers will too?
It's possible they pay a little bit more, but what we in the short term, but what we have seen with the companies we represent is that with the use of technology, AI, and other things, if you onshore your production in the United States, there are ways to keep production costs down low. In fact, Austin, what we're seeing also is there's a decoupling from some of these areas like China because foreign companies were manufacturing in China historically because the labor costs were low. That's not so much the case anymore in China. They were manufacturing there more out of convenience. But now that President Trump has forced the issue with these high reciprocal tariffs, it's causing them to decouple and onshore the United States.
All right. We appreciate your time. This is something that we're obviously going to have to continue to track in the days and weeks ahead. John Thomas is the managing director of Nestpoint. Good seeing you. Talk soon.
Thanks so much.
So, slide away for a quick break. Right now we're looking at about 10:24 in the nation's capital, 7:24 on the West Coast. Lots more to cover today, including the Russia-Ukraine war and much more. Hal Kempfer coming up in a moment. We'll be right back.